What is going on, everyone? It is your boy Thriller here, and we are here for BBR content once again. We are here for the Week 8 Pickems, the final week of the regular season. Now, I'm going to be breaking the fourth wall to you guys. I'm actually recording this on Thursday, and when Week 7 is breaking down this week. And I figured, you know what, just go ahead and get the Week 8 Pickems out of the way so I don't have to worry about stressing about recording something on my days off. Plus, I got the time to do so. I might yawn a lot though, so that's the price we pay with this. But this is a very important week. There are a lot of coaches fighting for the last four slots of the playoffs. A lot of teams that are 3-3, 4-3. So a lot is going to be going down this week. There are, at least to my knowledge, three teams that are already playoff locked. I cannot spoil which three they are because that involves spoiling the week 7 games. But just though there are some chances that people, though, if you make it 5-3, they finish the season 5-3, you can still get knocked out of playoffs depending on differential. So even some of the coaches that may already have 5 wins, they have to make sure they at least lose out with only small differential loss. So anyone is possible to make it out here. I think the only coaches that can't make playoffs, I think, are Dell, Amel, Arch, D-Ray. I think those are the only four coaches that cannot make playoffs. Everyone else actually has a legitimate chance, but they need a lot of stuff to happen to them. Like from 12th to essentially the 8th seed, and then from 8th seed to 5th seed, possibly or 4th seed. There's a lot of back and forth that can happen. So there's a lot going on here for these playoff matches. So this week is going to be the most important week for playoff matches going into it. So if you guys are hyped and ready for us to break down some of these games, leave a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you are subscribe if you're new. Join the crew here today because we're throwing the king of the crew. We're on the road to 200 subs. Let's hopefully get that by the end of these before the end of this year. So, with that being said, let's knock it off here and let's talk about a matchup that does determine at least a matchup that could make or break it for a lot of coaches. Now, like I said, I'm breaking the fourth wall and I know the results of these week 7 games, but I will state that I'm going to talk about these matchups like every single matchup is important. Even though I know the results to some of them, I will still talk about these games and act like they are majorly important, just to make it fair, and that way I don't spoil anything for some other people. So the first matchup we have is the Golden State Glades OG Albina, who has Iron Valiant, Chi Yu, Gilmora, Swampert, Metagross, Talonflame, Decidueye, and Porygon Z. Like I said, you got a lot of yawning today since I want to record this. And I think one of the best ways to end off a season is going against the man that will never upload Draft League again. We got our boy Kirby, aka the Winnipeg Blue Blastoise, with Gouging Fire, Iron Treads, Rillaboom, Azel, Primarina, Lolan Muck, Urshifu, Rapture, Electrode, and Galar Slowbro. This is a really interesting matchup because I think they're both top two, match perfectly into each other. Obviously, there's some pros and cons. Let's talk about Owen's team against Kirby. So, looking against Kirby here, Kirby kind of does struggle with Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant is very threatening in a lot of ways. Now, Iron Valiant may possibly be pressured not to Broth this week, and you may be asking yourself, like, Thriller, that's crazy talk. Why would he not bring it? Well, let's think about this. If he's not booster speed, Iron Shreds, if it is a booster speed, outspeeds it and kills with Iron Head. Primarino beats it. Muck beats it. Glauer Slowbro beats it. Rillaboom can kind of check it with a two-shot with Grassy Glide. And Gouging Fire just says, I destroy everything. So there's a part of Owen that may not even bring his Iron Valiant because it's rough in the matchup. It's kind of tough to really be brought. Now, Iron Valiant can still come. It's a very good mod in this matchup, but I feel like if he brings it, he's gotta force himself to bring booster speed. And the reason why I say he's gotta bring booster speed is because if not, Azov also revenges. So he needs to find out if there's gonna be a Scarf Azov or not. So I just think it's really tough to bring Iron Valiant in this match. Whew, excuse me. It's really tough for Iron Valiant to be brought this matchup. It is really, really tough for it to be brought. So I don't know, man. It's really gonna be hard. Chi Hu looks absolutely great in this matchup. Dual stab looks really great. I kind of like something along the lines of like taunt, dual stab plus ruination. Ruination to get that guaranteed 50% off on things like Muck, Rim, Gallus, Lowbro, and then like taunt to shut down any types of recovery. I think is really great. Dual stab looks absolutely fantastic this matchup. Just really hard for Kirby to really deal with. The Porygon Z, besides the Iron Shreds, I think Porygon Z kind of just shreds. Like, there is no good normal resist on this team whatsoever, which I think is really, really good. And I really like the Hariyama in this matchup. Now, Hariyama obviously it looks a little tough to be brought when there are two psychic types and a fairy type. But Hariyama really kind of mid-ground checks quite a lot of things, like a bulk up variant kind of checks on things like the Iron Shreds, the Boom, physical Azov to an extent, Urshifu to a bit of an extent. But overall, I just think it's a really solid mod. Definitely don't think he might bring it, but it's definitely solid for this matchup. Decidueye, don't really think you bring Decidueye. Kind of really tough to be brought with things like Mug and Iron Shreds. I mean, Rillaboom can actually 1v1 you a little bit, but then again, you can also get 1v1. There's also a guy. Oh, yeah. But I don't think it's crazy for Owen to bring it. I do think he has to get past Muck primarily and the Guardian Fire to get this Decidueye to start slightly popping off, but we'll have to see it and wait on that. Swampert, um, Swampert's a little tough to bring, but I do think Swampert does really well in things like Gouge Fire and Iron Shreds. Obviously, it's got to deal with the Rillaboom, the Grass Couch from Azo, Grass Couch from Primarina. It's a really good check to Alolan Muck. It's a decent check to Rapid Strike, but it's not the best, and it's a decent check to a Galarian Slowbro. So, I definitely think Swampert has a really good, decent matchup here. It just really depends on what Owen wants to do with Swampert. Metagross, really it's really tough for me to say Metagross is good in this matchup when there's so many coverage options from his team. Like the top two just destroy it. Knockoff plus high horsepower beats it with Rillaboom. Azov has the coverage to check it. Specs Purina two shots it. Alolan Muck 1v1s it to an extent. Ursha Rapid Strike can two shot it depending on the bull. And the last two just can't do anything. Excuse me. So it's gonna be really interesting to see that. Talonflame here looks really strong. Dual stab is very much unresisted at all on Kirby's side. I think something along the lines like Willow Roost, dual stab kind of looks really nice here. Or SD and dual stab with Roost. Like there's just a lot of ways I think you can get around Talonflame. I think Talonflame has an amazing matchup here. What else does Owen have? Just a Glim. Glamora. It's good and bad, but it's pretty much like it's actually really even, Steven. Like, obviously, it can be a great gouging fire revenge killer with it's either rock polish off and meteor beam. Earth power for Iron Tread, Sludge Wave for the Rillaboom, Sludge Wave for the Prim. Um, can take on the Muck with Earth power unless Kirby brings Mudshot Muck, which if he does, he's a true legend. But things get checked like Urshifu, Slowbro. I don't know. If Blue comes, it's like a sash lead, and tries to either get a spike or something like that, or just break, or just set up a rock polish and then just start breaking. I don't really know, but it's gonna be interesting to see what Owen uses this week. On Kirby's side, the gouging fire. I sound like a damn broken record, but this thing literally just wins games. The only real threat to gouging fire to deal with is Dev Swampert and a thick fat Hariyama. Other than that, there is nothing that stops gouging fire. There's literally nothing. One Dragon Dance up, or even just two Dragon Dances up, and it's GG. Like there will be no way Owen will be able to win over this thing. Iron Shreds. Iron Shreds a fantastic mod in this matchup. I think he has enough coverage to really kind of check everything else. I do think a booster speed set looks pretty nice here. Or Chopple. I think Chopple or booster speed makes the most sense for this matchup. Just because it can kind of help deal with having the booster speed to outspeed things like the Chi Yu if it was scarfed. And the Decision Y and the Porygon C. I also really like Chopple because it lets you take any of one hit from the Iron Valiant and revenge it, which I think is really great. Rillaboom is if Rillaboom had rock coverage, I would guarantee Rillaboom be brought. But since Rillaboom doesn't, which I think is the stupidest thing in the world, I think Rillaboom should have a rock coverage move. Even if it's just Rock 2, we should have it. I think Rillaboom can match up fairly well in this match. I think Rillaboom provides really good offensive momentum and he can really break down a lot of things. Lead sheet sets can look really good in this matchup, but I just don't know if Kirby's gonna feel Rillaboom here. I wouldn't be surprised to see Rillaboom, but I wouldn't be surprised not to see. I wouldn't be surprised to not see Rillaboom in this matchup. Azel's pretty strong in this matchup. I think something along the lines of potential Colbur with physical or mix with having like probably like psychic move, ghost type move, fighting move, and then probably coverage for the talent flame. So either a rock, electric. Um, I think it's only those are only the two options I think it might have is rock and electric coverage. I don't know. Primarily, probably even more so rock maybe. But Azel has the tools to really do a lot in this matchup. Primarina is absolutely a threat this matchup. I definitely could see Kurt maybe trying to pull off a surprise factor with Scarf. Scarf looks actually really solid in this matchup. But Specs Prim is just unresisted. There is nothing that can come in on this thing's dual stab. It is really much a problem for Owen, and something which he's gonna be careful. Electrode, don't think it's a real Pokemon. Galarian Slowbro, I also don't realistically think comes. Just have been dealing with Chi-Yu, Valiant, with Chi-Yu, Metagross, Decidueye. I don't really think it is that good of a matchup with Kirk. You can actually kind of build around that a little bit. So he's down the other two. The Alolan Mug, I feel like you're almost forced to bring Alolan Mug this matchup, just because it's a really good check to things like the Decidueye. It's a really good check down your Valiant. It's a solid check into Chi-Yu. It's just overall a decently good line this matchup. It just really prevents a lot of things from going. And then Urshifu Rapid. Now, this is a really interesting Rapid matchup. I feel like Rapid is forced to be Scarfed or it's forced to be Banded. Now, you maybe ask yourself, why do I say Banded? I think Banded looks absolutely insane. It literally takes just one switch in prediction from Kirby, which he's the GOAT, so he knows how to do that. Just one switch out prediction just to be able to hit a button and able to kill something and then lose that resistance to things like the Aqua Jet or the Surging Strikes. I think Bandit or Scarf is easily brought in this matchup. I don't think any other set really works. SD doesn't make any sense really, unless you get Eevee to take a hit. But I think Bandit just looks the best in this matchup. So definitely think this is a matchup that's going to go really back and forth, and it's going to be a tough matchup. This might be my game of the week because first off, it's my two bros, but also it's just one of those matchups that there's a lot that can happen here. So looking at this, hmm, so I'm trying to make sure what other games that could matter here. But I think I'm gonna make this my game of the week. Who would have thought we would talk about game of the week right there out the get go, but we do. But who I pick for this one? Ooh, oh man, I'm trying to go think of based off track record. I think off the track record, I think Kurt and Owen are tied with each other. I think maybe one has more wins than the other. I don't remember. I remember the last time I think these Two-Faced, what got stunted on by Kurt. But that was back in Gen 8, though. I have no idea if they played in Gen 9 yet or not, so that's the thing. And if they did, I don't remember anything from it. um, but I'm gonna pick Owen, mostly because I want to see I want to see if the champ can defend the title. I want to see if he can be able to win this, win the week 7 and win this week, and just be able to make the comeback and defend his championship. Because I think it's better when the champ is at least in the playoffs, because the champ can at least say that he actually defended his title. He wills and doesn't make playoffs. He just feels like he was stripped of the championship, like mostly time the WE does it. Yeah, that was right. That was a shot fired. It's truth though, but be granted, it has fair reason. Anyways, we're not here for the WE. We're here for the BBR. Up next, we have everyone's favorite coach, the Cosmo Whimsicots, aka Dr. Slacking, aka Matt, aka Matthew Traps, aka Dog. He has got the Donphan, Giraffarig, the Terrakion, the Zarude, Mudsdale, Turtonator, Cobalion, Impidimp, Basculin, and Growlithe, as he is taking on Coach T. Rowe Price and the Columbus Cobalions, and they have got Torn T, Chiram, Slowking, Donphan, Ursaluna, Bronzong, Sylveon, Skuntank, Mienshao, and Go Goat. So looking at what Matt's got here, the Great Tusk is it's pretty solid this matchup. Not been too terrible. I do think you gotta get past things like Shiram and Torn T and arguably Slowking. But other than that, I do think you have can take on just about everything else comfortably well. I don't think there's really a lot of things to stress about. Maybe Mian Shao is coverage options, but other than that, I think like a booster speed bulk up variant looks really good. The Raging Bolt looks absolutely fantastic this matchup. I do think you have to be a little careful of double ground coming into your team, which I honestly don't think realistically comes, if I'm going to be honest with you. Looking at what his double ground type is, if his double ground probably wasn't Ursaluna, I would say double ground makes a very fair case to be brought. But since it's Ursaluna, I don't really think you bring that. If I'm going to be honest with you, I think this is an amazing boulder matchup. I think besides Bronzong and depending on which ground type he goes with, which probably will be Donphan, I think besides just those two alone, Boulder kind of just like booster speed or just even Bandit in general looks absolutely insane to this matchup. Zarude looks pretty decently strong in this matchup. There's like only one Pokemon that outspeeds it, and that is just the Torn T. I think on Zarude, by which I mean Ogremon, of course. I think something along the lines of Swords Dance, knockoff, Trailblaze, and then probably a coverage move for either the Torn or the Cura, maybe? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe like knockoff, maybe? I don't know. I think just Power Whip. You could also go Trailblaze, Power Whip, knockoff, Swords Dance, and just go with that. Grass Spam looks really strong. You only need your Dark move for Bronzong. But if you don't want to go Trailblaze, you want to just go Power Whip, you could just be a Berry for the Torn or the Yachi Berry for the Curum for your Scarf. I think overall, just Ogremon looks really strong in this matchup. Iron Crown is very interesting in this matchup. I think if you bring it, you don't bring specs. I think something along the lines of Calm Mind looks really good. I think kind of more towards a physically defensive Calm Mind setup. Bring Dual Stab just looks super great. If there's got any coverage, it's Slow King, you bring that. Maybe like a Shuka Berry variant, so you can be able to take on the Don fan relatively well. And then maybe Shadow Ball if you have it to be able to take on the Bronzong. But then again, you need to be Shadow Ball then instead of Shadow Ball dual stab with your Calm Mind, so never mind about that. But overall, I do think it's a pretty good mod into this team. The Basca Legion is pretty all right. Water Ghost looks really strong in the matchup. I think you have to deal with Skunk Tank and cure him a little bit. But I do think that something along the lines of Scarf, Specs looks super strong here. I think he does really well. Was there any other Pokemon that I missed? I think Enamorus is okay, but I don't really know if you bring it. I think it's just an okay Pokemon in this match. I don't really fully bring it. Tinglu, don't really think well, Tinglu you could bring, but at the same time, I don't know if you really do bring, just because me and Joe can check it. Sylveon beats it 1v1 unless you have Heavy Slam, and Kyurem beats it 1v1 unless you have Heavy Slam. I just don't know how I feel about it. I mean, hazards are pretty good into T Rose. His only removal is the Don fan. And if you get rid of the Don fan, hazards can really be stacked up, as John shown in week 6. He really exploited that. And I think that's now and Grafai. Grafai I don't think comes. Grafai is not that really that good of a mon in this matchup. Really need to like kind of been max attack Sword Dance to deal with Bronzong effectively well. Um, really can't beat the Dawn fan, and it has to rely on gunk shots, but it could do it. But I don't know. It just seems a little bit of a weird matchup for it. We're looking at T Rose team right here. I think Torn T, for the most part, looks really strong in this matchup. I think Hurricane plus Heat Wave is really good. I think you go the lines of maybe Dark Pulse as your last move, and then maybe Taunt. Well, if you're nasty plot, then you have to be. If you're nasty plot, then potentially you have to be Dark Pulse, Heat Wave, Hurricane. But if you're not nasty plot, I can see like Taunt plus those 3 moves that we can kind of shut down a couple of sets. Pretty decent mon in this matchup. Obviously, you gotta get past the Raging Bolt and the Iron Boulder, but other than that, I think it looks pretty strong in this matchup. Cherim looks insane and like super insane. There's very little ice switchings that Matt's gonna have. His only real ice switching he's gonna have is the Iron Crown, which he might be forced to be spit death. So I could definitely see Scarf or Spectrum coming. Slowking, I think, only comes if he really wants to give Snow Boost to the Kyurem. Otherwise, I don't think he realistically brings Slowking as a really bad matchup, in my opinion. Like I said, between the two ground types, I think Donphan makes the most sense. I think when you look at a Pokemon like Ursaluna, it just loses to things like the Great Tusk, the Iron Boulder because it's fighting coverage, and the Basket Legion stuff, like plus there's low kick from Grafia that can be a thing. Like I don't think Ursaluna really makes a ton of sense. I think Domhan does a lot of better job checking things, especially when we also have the spin support that you're gonna need. Plus it's a really good answer to things like the Iron Crown. It's a decent answer to the Iron Boulder, and it's a decent enough answer to itself on the Great Tusk. So also really good Radiant Bolt check if it's played correctly. So definitely think there's merit to bring it. Sylveon. I think you could rate Sylveon. I think you just gotta get past Iron Crown and maybe the Grafii to an extent. But otherwise, I think Sylveon could do really well here. I think like something like Specs is really good, but I feel like you gotta Wish support with this. Like I think Wish Protect, Hyper Voice, and potentially Psychic move because if you fear Grafii. But if not, you run Baton Pass. So there's that. Bronzong, you might be forced to bring. Just so you can have a check that things like the Iron Crown, the Great Tusk, the Raging Bolt. Well, not even Raging Bolt, really. Iron Boulder is what I meant to say. Ogre Pawn to a extent. Maybe even to the Tinglu to an extent as well, and Grafii. But I think Tinglu, I mean, Bronzong can do decent here. I just don't know if it's going to be fully brought. Mian Xiao looks pretty strong. I think something like Triple Axle plus Combat looks really good there. I could see U-Turn as an option. I could see something like Bulk Up, SD, Knockoff as the last move. And there's a lot of variants there. I think me and Shell looks really, really strong here. Go-Goat. Funny enough, Go-Goat actually could be brought here because let's think about this, right? Go-Goat gets the ground coverage that it needs to take on things like the Raging Bolt, the Iron Boulder, the Iron Crown, and the Grafii. And then you have the grass coverage to be able to take on things like the Great Tusk, the Iron Boulder, the Tingaloo. It gets Play Rough, which can help take on things like Great Tusk, even if it were fearing a Rindo Berry. The Raging Bolt, the Tingaloo, if it was, going to be like that. And then obviously the grass coverage it needs. So I think we go with Milk Drink, Stomping Tantrum, Horn Leech, or whatever strong grass move you have. And then maybe Tech on if you have a rock move, run a rock move because you can do that with an Amorous. So like ground grass rock move then, like, or player up, one of the two. So that way you can hit some things you feel like you need to hit. So yeah. So go go. I want to see the go go. I want to see him broad. I think Skunk Tank was pretty much the last time we had to talk about. Skunk Tank, don't really think he comes. It's not that really good into a team like this. I mean, Sucker Punch Priority is good for things like the Iron Boulder and the Iron Crown, but and the Basculation Female, but I don't know. I think it's a little overwhelmed by the offense of things like for Taz, the Raging Bolt, Ting Lu. I just think it's a little mid, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tiro brought it because he might be forced to. Who knows? For this matchup here, I think I gotta give it to Matt. I think Matt can really overwhelm T-Row with this matchup. Just because his team, like things like the Great Toss, the Iron Bull, the Raging Bull, Ogre Pond, like the first four, I think just do so well into the majority of what T-Row has. So that's more so why I kind of wanted to say Matt is going to win this one here. Up next, we have Panther versus D-Ray. And this should be probably a fun one here. I'll be very interested to see how this goes because it is technically Weather War, baby. We have got Panther here, who's got Exegil, Cinderace, Keldeo, Galarian Weezing, Raikou, Salamence, Galarian Articuno, Tyranitar, Clodsire, and Appletime. Taking on D-Ray, who has got Goldango, Hisuian, Samurott, Ogerpon, Heartflame, Alolan Ninetales, Axris, Mesprit, Tentacruel, Ribombay, Hitmontop, and Sandaconda. So looking on Panther's side here, his Excadrill goes into town here. Now, I could see Panther try to pull off an SD mold breaker set potentially, because then that kind of just shreds through everything. He gets rid of Bombay's shield dust so he can get you flinch potentially if it's Sash, so that you can kind of get the flinch there. Unless you go for Rock Blast like a real legend. Which honestly, Rock Blast looks so good into this team with swords and it's just saying. Like, if I was Panther, I run SD, Earthquake, Rock Blast, and then X Scissors, so that way you guarantee KO the Hisuian Samurott. Because sometimes the Earthquake actually doesn't always guarantee knock it out unless unless you're Life Orb, which I don't think you bring Life Orb out of Saints matchup. I think you bring either Pasho or you bring loaded dice to guarantee the 4 to 5 hits on things like the Ogerpon, the Ninetales, and the Rabombi, potentially. And X's is also super good for things like Mesprit, which I think is also really great. Cinderace looks really strong here. Cinderace has very little switching on D-Ray's team. It just takes like usually is like one of these predictions. Like I think a bulk up Cinderace actually could be very threatening. I think Choice Baited also looks really strong. I also would not be surprised to see Port Change be brought so that way they can steal the Aurora Veil away, which might force the Alolan Ninetales not to be brought into this matchup. Because let's be honest here, Alolan Ninetales kind of has a dog ass match. Like loses to Drill and Sand, loses to Cinderace, even loses to Scarf Drill, loses to Galarian Weezing, loses to Tyranitar. Like it's got a couple of Pokemon it's quite effective against and it has decently good matchup wise, but I just don't know. I feel like if you bring it, you had to bring offensive. You can't afford to bring Veil, especially if you can't stop. Because like if you bring it like an offensive Ninetales and just go for the attack instead of the Veil, and they try to go for things like Taunt to shut that down, you can take advantage of that. But we'll talk more about that when we get to it. Keldeo always looks strong in every single week it's been brought. I think this is Panther's #1 Pokemon he's brought every single game. I think, which goes to show how much of a Keldeo fan he was. Uh, Galarian Weezing has a pretty decent matchup here. I do think you bring potentially Levitate because it kind of shuts down a couple of things. But it kind of gets overwhelmed. So I think maybe neutralizing gas looks pretty decent. I don't know. It's gonna be really weird to see what Panther does with Weezing. Like I don't know if Weezing really comes. Weezing's kind of not the greatest in this matchup. Like you're forced to run Levitate, but then you have things like Ogerpon, Heartflame, and Haxorus, which have Mold Breaker, which can use ground type moves still on you. Like, I don't know. It's really weird. I feel like he brings it. He's only bringing it to stop potential hazards from being set up on his side of the field with T spikes. Raikou, bad Pokemon, doesn't really be brought. I don't think it has a really good matchup. Kind of be forced to be specs if it was anything, because like I feel like you need Shadow Ball, you need Thunderbolt. You can bring Subcalm Mind, but I feel like Subcalm Mind is way too passive and just lets things like a Scale Shot Haxorus come in for free, get a Scale Shot boost, and then just start going to town. Salamence is pretty decent. If it gets a Dragon Dance off and the Ninetales doesn't Scarf, it is a big threat though. It is definitely a problem. Especially with dual wing beat, as it can break any sashes, which is really good. I think something like Clear Amulet also looks really good. I think Moxie would look really great on this Pokemon too. Or something like mix with Moxie, so you can be like special with Hydro Pump to hit Sandaconda. Galarian Articuno, don't really think it's broad, but I could see a case for it. Like as long as it has Shadow Ball, I think it can take on just about everything then, which is really important to know. But if it doesn't have Shadow Ball, then it kind of just loses to everything really. I don't think it's really that good because Goldango just walls it. Hisuian Samurai always puts it in a checkmate position. Law 9 till self speeds it and just kills it. Mesprit 1v1s it from the Spadef side. I don't know. T-Tar, I only say you bring if T-Tar's brought, it's only to come to Hail. Like T-Tar, in my opinion, has a really bad matchup into things like Ogerpon, which can always be with Revenge in with Chopple, Rindo, whatever that is. Samurai always kills it with Sacred Sword. Goldengo can always beat it. Goldengo can actually be able to beat it if there's no sand. Mesprit, if it's physical, can run Drain Punch, be able to knock that out. Ro- Hitmontop always 1v1s it. Sandaconda always 1v1s it. So literally, you're only bringing T-Tar if you're bringing sand. Quagsire, maybe pretty broad. I don't know. I don't think it's really that good. If you want my honest opinion, I think Quagsire is a trash mon. Appleton you can maybe make a case for, but I don't know, man. I think with having Mold Breaker Pokemon like Ogerpon to ignore the thick that and be able to click ID College for free, don't really think you bring it. So I will say Panther is a bit limited this matchup, but his limitation is going to be really good. As for D-Ray, I do think when you look at D-Ray's team here, Samurott obviously looks really good in this matchup. Oh, we didn't even talk about Keldeo. Keldeo does look pretty solid. I think you have to be forced to be like Specs or Scarf this matchup, however, though, just be able to kind of check things. Unless you're going to want Rindo Berry for the unless you want to be Rindo or Agachi for either the Heart Flame or the Ninetales. Just overall, I don't know if how Keldeo fits this build. Looking at D-Ray's side, his Goldango I think is a little tough to bring, but I wouldn't say it's the worst thing he could bring in this matchup. His Hisuian Samurai I think looks really strong. I think it has a really solid matchup here. Ogrepon Heartflame really is a very hard Pokemon for Panther to deal with. I think that some of the move coverage that it has actions too, which is the ground and rock coverage, plus the dual stab looks very hard for Panther to deal with. Ninetales, I honestly think an offensive Ninetales with Choice Scarf looks really, really good. And the reason why I say it has to be Choice Scarf, you want to have something that can revenge Salamence. You want something that can revenge the Keldeo. I feel like you just need to have them. So I think things like Blizzard, Freeze Dry, Ice Beam, and Freeze Dry look super good. Moonblast, I mean. Like your three main ice moves in Moonblast look super good. Honestly, you don't really need to click a fairy type move in this matchup. The only time you realistically need to click a fairy type move is just for the T-Tar. Otherwise, you can kind of just spam ice type moves for the most part. Obviously, a Cinderace can be a problem, but it's not going to really want to be taking Blizzards in the snow. So definitely something to note there. And plus, the freeze chance from that can be really good. Haxorus looks relatively strong. I think Dragon Dance Haxorus obviously comes, but don't know if you want to bring SD Skill Shot. I feel like SD Skill Shot works a lot better for what you're kind of looking for. The only reason I think it's a little hesitant to bring SD is just because of Salamence. I think having the option to bring something like Dragon Dance helps guarantee that you're safe from things like Salamence and stuff like that. Plus, if you just need the +1, you can do that, and they can run something like Scale Shot with loaded dice which is really, really good there. Best spread, I think definitely could come. It's a really good defensive check into quite a lot of things that Panther has, which I think is really solid. Tentacruel, a really good Cinderace check, unless it's rocking with in Headbutt. A fantastic Keldeo check. a decent enough Galarian Weezing check, and overall a pretty decent mod in this matchup. I think he's got to be defensive though to really take the hits that he needs to do and be able to kind of just whittle stuff down. Rabombe, don't really think that anything brought. Rabombe has a really bad matchup. Like Energy Ball is its best move to hit the extra drill, and then it can't really touch the Cinderace. It can touch Glaring Weezing, but needs Psychic, but then it also really can't touch everything else. Like it's neutral with some of its coverage, but I don't know. Rabombe, it could be broad, but unless its Cinderace gets chipped down to like 50%, it's not going to be able to win with a Quiver Dance and just pop right there. I mean, Specs could definitely be a thing, but I don't know. Hitmontop, I think, is actually pretty decent in this matchup. I think like a defensive Hitmontop with things like Triple Axle, Close Combat, Rapid Spin, and then maybe Knockoff if it has it. Um, or Fake Out looks really strong here. Sandaconda, I think it's very solid here. I think it's in like rest, sleep talk, and then Earthquake plus Stone Edge looks really good here. I think that can really do really well in this matchup. Or something like Resto Chesto with Glare or Coil, whichever one you want to go with. And then Ground and Rock move. I think it's really solid here. But looking at how the teams are going to go, I do think. Hmm. I'm actually going to pick D-Ray for this one. I think D-Ray just has some Pokemon that Panther actually really struggles with, and Panther really needs to rely on getting Sand up. So as long as D-Ray can kind of keep Sand in check for the most part, D-Ray can just win this game. He literally can. So it's going to be really interesting to see how D-Ray is going to be able to do this. But I believe in D-Ray. I believe he can end off his season with a win. He is one of the few coaches that are confirmed out of playoffs. So that is going to be thing. Actually, I might have already said the four people that are guaranteed out of playoffs, and if I did, I apologize because one of those just was actually a spoiler, so that's my bad. But then again, actually, yeah, I can talk about those technically because you this is week 8. I'm stupid, but but still, I think D-Ray can end the season with a win. I think he definitely can. Up next, we have got my main man Jason, aka Diet Tight, taking on everyone's favorite penguin, Aimel here. Aimel has got Darkrai, Petra, Quavel, Clefable, which is really weird name there. Latias, Ogerpon, Quarterstone, Hippowdon, Regieleki, and Vivillon, where Jason has got Ursulina, Blood Moon, Iron Bundle, Azumarill, Slitherwing, Tinkaton, Zarude, Noivern, Uxie, Mug, and Pikachu, and the Misdreavus. Now, as I said earlier, Jason actually is one of the four coaches that cannot make the playoffs. So Jason's actually doing really fun, but I'll let Jason explain his videos. So I will talk about this though, as if it was a real matchup. Like you imagine if this was a matchup where Jason won, he had a chance to make playoffs. So we'll discuss this matchup, but just know that Jason, since he can't make playoffs, he's gonna do something actually really fun with this team. But like I said, I'll let him explain his video for week 8. But I will talk about this matchup if this was real. So looking at Amel's team, it really gets messed up by Blood Moon. Blood Moon is super hard for Amel to break through. Iron Bundle, another fantastic mon that Amel just have no counterplay to. And wait till you guys see this. Okay, no, that would spoil it. Never mind. This bundle goes absolutely crazy in this matchup. Azu does the exact same thing. Absolutely crazy in this matchup. Azu only has really one good check, and that's Petra Run when that's just about it. There's nothing else that checks this thing. Slitherlane looks really strong here, but I don't realistically think you bring in unless you bring Scarf. I think Scarf's the only way you really bring Slitherwing this matchup. Ting's pretty solid, kind of checks a lot of boxes, can beat the Petcharon 1v1 to an extent. Really good answer to things like Clefable, Latias, Ogerpon, Darkrai. Zarude's pretty strong in this matchup. I think there's a really hard debate for Zarude to be able to really take him down here. Noivern don't really know if you bring it. I think it's okay, but I don't realistically think it's good. Uxie is just always a fantastic Pokemon, man. There's no bad matchup Uxie's had. I think Uxie's been brought to every game this season from what I've seen from Jason. This Pokemon's just really good. Muck is okay, but I realistically think you don't bring it. Pikachu could actually have a case for itself. It's not that bad this matchup. It has a lot of good tools where I do think you look more sort of special Pikachu, just so you can be able to take on the Pachyrama a lot better. And Misdreavus is not being brought back to the light of day, even though it kind of does have a decent enough matchup besides dealing with the Darkrai. Looking at Amel's side, Darkrai is kind of put in check here. I don't know if you realistically are going to bring Darkrai. I think Darkrai loses to quite a thing. Like if it gets shipped down, vacuum away from Blood Moon, takes it out, can get revenge by bundle, loses to Azu because Azu can always live one hit. Saluing checks it, Tink checks it, Zarude can kind of take it on 1v1 decently. I don't really know if Abel's going to bring it. Petron, I feel like he might be forced to be brought just because Petron's pretty still decently good in most matchups here. Obviously, Petron gets walled by Ursulina Bloodmoon completely unless it's running Toxic. So there's that. But other than that, Petron kind of be able to 1v1 things like the Azu, the Slitherwing, the Tinkaton to an extent, Zarude to an extent, 1v1's Noivern, can 1v1 the Uxie to a certain extent, 1v1's Mach. Just a lot of things there. So I do think Petrov's pretty decent. Quavel, I think, is pretty okay this matchup. Don't know if he's going to be confident enough to want to bring it, but definitely a pretty solid Pokemon in this matchup with how I'm going to be able to click Aqua Step into close combat most matchups here. I think the only real threats that's going to stop Quavel from really doing a lot of things is primarily going to be the Azumarill and the Zarude because Scarf Zarude can definitely revenge Quavel if it's not careful. Clefable is a little interesting here. I think Clefable, if it is brought, is kind of mixed defensive, maybe a little more towards physically defensive to be able to take on things like the Slitherwing, the Zarude. But it could also be special defensive. It could be Calm Mind, it could be Cosmo Power. I don't really know. I do think Store Power looks pretty three into this team, just because Moonblast can eventually chip down like the the one thing because I could need something like Cosmic Power, Leftovers, Storm Power, Moonblast, and Protect. You protect on the Gigaton Hammer, which if it works the way I feel like it does, then you can basically stop Gigaton hammering from happening, and then you just get more cosmic power boost, protect cosmic power boost, and go from there. Latias, don't really think you bring Latias. I think Latias is a really poor matchup here. I think he doesn't really check or do anything you really want. Ogre Pond's pretty decent here. I think he checks the top three really, really well. But he does struggle a bit to deal with things like the Slitherwing, the Tinkaton, the Zaru to an extent. Uxie it has a very hard time trying to break, so don't really know, but it's not that bad. Hippowdon, I don't think you bring it. I think with like when you look at Jason's first six, five of those six beat it. So and then you have Uxie that can just kind of wall it. Regieleki, don't really think you bring it. It gets really kind of checked by the priority that Jason has. And Vivillon. Vivillon could kind of put in some work here, but it wouldn't be too surprising here. Um, but I will say this. I think Aimel team is really, really, really strong here. It can definitely do really well in this matchup. Now, I will say, obviously, like I said, I know what Jason's going to be doing with his team, so I can't guarantee that Jason's going to win this game. If I was to look at these teams as if it was a real matchup, I pick Jason. But knowing what's going to happen, I am going to pick Amel. But I would love it if Jason could take the team that he's going to get and actually win this game. And just that's would be one of those where I'm glad I would get the predictions wrong. But I will pick Amel just for the sake of knowing what's going to happen here. Obviously, none of these week 8 games have been played to my knowledge, so I'm not acting like I know what's happening here, just so everyone's clear. Up next, a matchup that I think a lot of people have been waiting to see, and that is going to be Keegan, one of the two that actually clinched playoffs last week. He is 100% going to be in the number one or number two seed. He is debated to potentially getting the third to fourth seed. It depends on how well 6 Foot Hacks and Aim will do in their respective weeks. But Keegan, I think, was the first. Keegan or whoever we talk about next, I think was the first person to actually officially clinch playoffs. Or it's both of them. I don't know. Anyways, we have Tegan here, the Olympic Flygon, taking on with Meowscar, Rada, Iron Hands, Volcarona, Screamtail, Landorus, Incarnate, Blastoise, Dragonite, which still, and Bruxfish, which is not coming. Taking on the man that needs his redemption, and that is going to be my main John, aka the Portland Nightshaders, with Latios, Annihilate, Scizor, Weavile, Comfey, Sandy Shocks, Andy Shock, my bad, Scar, Skarmory, Big Man, the Overquill with Little Man, the Quillfish. So let's look at John's team here. Latios kind of go dummy stupid here. I'm not gonna lie. I do think that it's gonna force Keegan to run Covert Cloak on Screamtail to stop Luster Purge from lowering its defenses. I think overall though Latios is a really strong matchup here. I actually would love to see Dragon Dance because Dragon Dance actually would. I think it has dual wing beat. I could be wrong here, but with having dual wing beat and something like protective pads, it lets you take on things like the Volcarona super well and lets you be able to hit the Meowscarada for super effective damage. Then things like Earthquake, and then maybe Zen Headbutt or Dragon Claw, whichever one. I think Zen Headbutt's a little bit better. Obviously, you're walled in by Screamtail to an extent, which I think is a fair factor in there. But I do love Latios. I think Latios is really good. Spanky, it's time to shine, my guy. I think something like a Lumberry set looks really good. I think you go something along the lines of Bulk Up, Rock Move, Drain Punch, and Rage Fist. Now, you may be asking yourself, why go with a Rock Move? I think having a Rock Move to guarantee knock out that Volcarona is always good, and having Lumberry is always a good safe check to that as well. Screamtail can't always safely come in on Annihilate because any little damage that Screamtail is going to do to that Annihilate, it just boosts that reaches, so it's not really a safe check towards it. I think a Volcarona check is a lot more safer, in my personal opinion. How bulky John's going to make this thing, I don't know. I think John might make it a little bit more slightly physically defensive, but have a good chunk of SPDEF and HP. I think there's going to be little to attack. I think like an Impish or a Careful set for the ability goes really well in this matchup. I think he might lean a little more towards Careful with having more physical defense than special defense. But overall, I think this is a fantastic Annihilate game. Like Spanky is going to spank people, which I think is really great. Weavile. Weavile is pretty decent this matchup. I think that SD Weavile can actually really like shred through. I think SD with low kick knockoff and either triple axle or ice cold crash. Maybe shard possibly, but seeing as that you outspeed me on Scarada, I think ice shard. I think either ice cold crash or triple axle is the best ice move to go into this matchup with. But I think we've all super solid ball in this matchup. Really provides really good offensive pressure here. Andy Shocks. I feel like it's not the worst thing to be brought here, as I do think with being able to speed tie with the laters is really good. I think it might force it to be a boost your speed set, which is really good. I think we could see the lines of Hyper Beam coming back again. I also wouldn't mind seeing Tri Attack, because Tri Attack's a good neutral click into things like the Meowscarada and the Iron Hands on some of the pivoting. I think if John brings it, I think you bring dual stab, power gem for the Volcarona. Now you may ask yourself why power gem. I think having that quad effective move if it's a bulky Volcarona actually goes a long way. And I would probably say those four moves. But if John really doesn't value power gem as much, which is very fair, I could see either spikes or stealth rocks this game. I think more along the lines of bikes work a little bit better in this matchup just to get chipped down things like the Registeel, the Iron Hands, the Screamtail. I feel like spikes look really, really good here. I don't think rocks come because I don't think really Dragonite comes. I think Dragonite has a really bad matchup here. Um, what else does John have? Scizor, it's not terrible this matchup, but I don't really know how comfortable John's gonna feel. Like it's a really good Meowscarada pivot into to be physically defensive. Iron Hands has access to Fire Punch, so it can beat that 1v1. Screamtail also has access to Flamethrower, which can be able to kind of beat it 1v1. But John Swords it's still tougher to break. I think Akaberry would be the Force Brain, so you guarantee live one hit from Ocarona and can deal it out with dual Wing Beat. I think it's a doesn't really do much against things like Blastoise. It can't really do much against Registeel unless it's close combat, which I don't know if it's broad. Like this is a really weird Scizor match. Like I could see Scizor be broad, but at the same time, it might be a little tough for Scizor to be broad. But who knows? Comfey, I actually think this is a pretty solid Comfey matchup. But if you also want my honest opinion, I think Store Power Comfey looks really good here. Now, obviously, you have to get past Reggie Steele, realistically speaking, but I think, and maybe arguably Meowscarada to an extent, but I really love Weakness Policy Store Power Comfey here. I think it does really, really well. Obviously, it has its checks and has a little bit of its, problems, but I do think this set can really, really work, and I'm really hoping John pops off it, but he might not do it because he thinks it's a meme set, so wouldn't be surprised if he didn't do it. Skarmory, don't think he can afford to bring Skarmory here. I think with Gravity, with Landorus, I think it's checked really easily. Meowscarada gets that Thunder Punch, which can be with a two-shot that thing if it gets set up, or if it's banded. Iron Hands always a 1v1s it. Volcarona can always 1v1 it. Landorus with Gravity always 1v1s it. Blastoise can beat it out 1v1, even with Body Press if it's special. And then Registeel can just Iron Defense up with it and just be a 1v1 that way as well. So and that just gives it free setup on it. Big man. Big man here looks actually pretty strong. I think like a Shuka Berry set looks really strong here, and I haven't enough special attack investment to knock out Landorus. Otherwise, you just run Crunch, Gunk Shot, and then maybe Spikes or T Spikes, depending if you want this to be your spiker. I do think T Spikes here though look super good. Like T Spikes can just win the game right here. Blastoise, I think, is forced to be Boots. Screamtail is forced to either be Covercold or Boots. Like I think if we can get some T Spikes going here, I think T Spikes are really strong here. And same for Little Man here. Little Man actually is pretty super strong. Like SD Aqua Jet looks really good into a lot of things. Like SD Gunk, Aqua Jet, and then you Liquidation or an ice move maybe or something along those lines. Or Destiny Bond if he feels like he lives one hit, needs to kill something and go from there. But I just think it's super spammable. Like again, like I said, Aquajet is really good there. I can see Shuka on this thing as well with a water move like Liquidation with Aquajet to just revenge. It's just a super strong Pokemon. Both the Overquills look really, really good. Both of the Hisuian Overquill and the regular Quillfish look super strong here. And I could really see Big Man and Little Man coming this week as they are very good. Obviously, they got to deal with things like the Landorus and the Iron Hands, but I think they were really good with this matchup. As for Keegan's team, I think Meowscarada is really threatening here. Meowscarada can really provide a liquid offensive damage here. I could see something like the lines of Mixed Meow potentially because of things like Aura Spear, which can be really good into things like the Weavile. I can also think like Sucker Punch Mind Games potentially. Sucker Punch is also really strong here as well. Meow just has a really good matchup into most things. I think Scizor and Comfey are a little hard for it to break, along with things like Skarmory and Overquill. But it can pretty much check just about everything else. Iron Hands is just the god tier Pokemon. Like you can't beat Iron Hands as much as you try. I think the only real check John has to Iron Hands is gonna possibly just be Latios and Andy Shocks. Skarmory really isn't a check anymore. Overquill could maybe, but it's really bad. Comfey could also be, but again, Comfey is also really bad. So John's gonna really struggle with Iron Hands. Excuse me. I think Volcarona's pretty decent this matchup. I think Volcarona with Quiver Dance, but I really think you have to bring something like a more of a bulky Volcarona spread, in my opinion, just so you can be able to take on things a little bit. But I could see something like Speed for the Annihilate, Speed for the Overquill potentially, then running like Max HP with little special attack investment with Quiver Dance. I think Quiver Dance, Fiery Dance, Bug Buzz, or just even Fiery Dance in general. I can see Quiver Dance, Fire Dance, Bug Buzz, and Psychic, but I also could just see Bug Buzz, Fiery Dance, and then Will-O-Wisp, because I don't think realistically you need Psychic for the Annihilate, which is the only reason you would bring it, unless you also want to really bring it for the Quillfish. So there's that. I think Landorus is insanely powerful here. Now Landorus, you may think he's not gonna be brought because of Weavile. but I do think Landers has a really solid matchup here. I think along the lines of like a special Landers or even a physical Landers looks really good. Mix also looks very terrifying. It might be forced to bring gravity into this matchup because of the fact that you can just spam Earth Power once gravity's up, which I think is really important to note here. Screamtail is just a fantastic defensive check and just about everything that John has, which I think is going to be one of the biggest problems for John to deal with this week, is going to be that Screamtail. Blastoise, I think Blastoise is forced to be a defensive on this matchup and be more sort towards special. I think Rapid Spin, Flip Turn, Surf, and then either Ice Beam or maybe even Earthquake to potentially check Coolfish, but I think Ice Beam's kind of needed for the Latios and for Andy Shock potentially if he wants to go to prediction play off of that. Um, I don't know. Really, just depends on what John Keegan wants to do. But I think he has to bring Blastoise. He has to bring Blastoise. Dragonite, don't really think it comes. Registeel, I definitely think it can come. Registeel is very good in this matchup. Obviously, Latios has the coverage for Latios, both on the physical and special side. Annihilate can be will be one. Scizor can potentially be able to take it out with an SD plus combat. Weavile with SD low kick beats it. It's a good comfy check. Kind of loses to Sandy Shocks, loses to Skarmory to an extent, and then Overcloak with Skullfish can kind of check. So I do think Rich Steel does come to this matchup. So based off of this one here, though, I want to give it to John just because I want John to win this one so badly so he can make playoffs. Um, uh, and be able to get that BBR championship. Let third time be the freaking charm for this man. But real quick, guys, I have to do something. I'll be right back. And we're back. Sorry about that, guys. But like I said, picking John to win this one. I really want John to win. All right, up next we have got Arch, who I really would love to see win at least one game this season. He has had probably some really bad luck, but he's also faced some of the best players out there. I really want Arc to be able to pick up the last win here. Unfortunately, this means he could end the playoff dreams of his opponent, but I think we all deserve, Art deserves to not be like, this doesn't deserve to go the winless season, man. But, yeah. We have Arc here, the Jamestown Judgment with the Greninja, Walking Way, Corviknight, Moltres, Cleavor, Hisuian Gudra, Terrakion, Gardevoir, and Weezing as he takes on Pokebaldi here and the Dundee Darmanitans, and Baldy has Garchomp, Galarian, Slowking, Enamorus, Heatran, Kilowattrel, King Gambit, Manaphy, Toadstool, and Ice Cube. Looking into some things that Baldy is going to actually struggle with, I think Walking Wake is actually really threatening into Baldy's team. I think Baldy has a very hard time finding ways to break that thing, especially if it gets a booster speed and it can just kind of click attacks. Specs also looks really strong into it, which is really threatening as well. Greninja, a super solid Pokemon, regardless of anything. Like, this is just a solid mon. It's just really strong here. Corviknight, I could definitely see something along the lines of Mirror Armor Corviknight, but here's the problem with that. Mirror Armor is really good, so it doesn't lower its own stats. But it's got to be a contrary Enamorus, and I think he's going to bank on that. So I think the signs of pressure is going to be definitely brought in this matchup, which is a little unfortunate. But I think outside of that, an Iron Defense Power Trip set really looks good, like Iron Defense, Rouge. But honestly, with things like the Kilowattrel and Enamorus, the Heatran, I actually don't know if the Corviknight's going to be brought because Enamorus can always check it. Excuse me. Like, I don't know. It's just really weird for Corviknight this matchup. Like, I think it's good, but it kind of gets a little messed up here. I think it'd be forced if it's brought to be max, fully, especially defensive, to really kind of check quite a lot of things, which I think it's gonna be forced to do. Moltres looks pretty decent. This Moltres actually looks really strong here. Actually, I think just besides dealing with Kilowattrel and Manaphy, it just does a lot. Like Scorch and Sands and the Heatran, Dual Stab looks really good into majority of everything out there, which I think is really strong. Cleavor, don't really know if you bring it. It's not like terrible into this matchup, but I don't really know. I feel like you're forced not to bring Scarf, and if you don't bring And if you don't bring Scarf, you kind of get revenged with some fast threats. But I do think something along the lines of like the Assault Vest looks super good here. Like I think Stone Axe looks really strong. Ground Move if it has it. Night Slash, which is boosted by sharpness, and then I think like last move plus combat, unless one of your last move plus combat for the heat train, but you want to risk the burn chances. I don't know if you really want to risk that. I do think are hesitant to bring X Scissor, which are boosted by sharpness, and X Scissor can do really well in this match. I just don't really know how you go with Cleavor. I think you can definitely bring it. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's that good. Gardevoir is very interesting in this matchup. I think along some lines along the sides of potentially like a Calm Mind Weakness Policy Gardevoir actually can kind of go insane here. I think things like the only real checks to Gardevoir you really have on this team is going to be the Heatran, Slowking, and somewhat the King Gambit, but primarily being the Heatran and the Glowking, which you can just easily get, set up and going with here. Like I said, like Gardevoir can, if it gets Calm Mind boost and it's decently bulky, it can take on get a weakness policy boost from the Galarian Slowking. And as long as he doesn't get a poison from Sludge Bomb or something, it kind of just goes in. And because he can get plus two plus twos off, and then the Glow King can't really do much, and then you do the weakness positive rock, and then you should be able to be revenge everything out there. Then you can just run. I think like Calm Mind or a Spear. Drain. I actually don't think you need a psychic move here. I think Aura Spear, Draining Kiss, Store Power. I mean, obviously psychic move, duh. I think you just go with that. I don't think you realistically need anything else. Cheating Gambit might be tough to have. I mean, Draining Kiss might be scary as your only fairy type move, but honestly, I don't think you really need any other fairy move out there. I think Store Power is going to knock out everything you really want to knock out. Draining Kiss gives you free recovery on Pokemon that you may or may want to click it on. So, this Gardevoir could kind of cook. Weezing! Don't realistically know if you bring Weezing. If you bring Weezing, you have to be kind of like a grounded Weezing, so that way you don't lose to T-Spikes, which Cloaking could set up on you if you're not careful. Terrakion looks pretty solid this matchup. I do think you have to bring Scarf Terrakion, though. I think Scarf Terrakion is there really good to be able to make sure you're faster than things like the Scarf Enamoris that could be potentially there, faster than Kilowattrel, and faster than potential plus one Garchomp with a Scale Shot and stuff. I could also see Bandit. There's a good case for Bandit as well. So there's that. Did we cover everything? It's just Goodra. Hisuian Goodra is actually pretty decently good in this matchup. I think Spadef with Iron Defense looks really good in this matchup. I think like a Rest Sleep Talk set with Iron Defense and then maybe Steel Move potentially. Maybe like a fully Fizz Def set when having Slice Spadef and HP, like like going max defense with a like an impish nature or like a bold nature if he wants to go special, or even like a relax. I mean, I don't know if you really go relax in this matchup, but you could. I think like rest, sleep talk, iron defense, like rest, sleep talk, body press, and then flash cannon. Flash cannon, so you'd be able to take on the Enamoris. Otherwise, body press just checks about everything else off the board for you if you really want. You really can't really lose to anything else, really. So I do think this unless you want to be Earthquake. Unless you might be like Iron Head to have a physical move to hit the Slow King instead of a special move, which I could see possibly, but I don't know. But with Baldy's team, I think Garchomp, if it gets set up before the Walking Away can with its speed boost, I think SD Scale Shot with Habomberry, I really have a hard time seeing that losing. I think you bring Mixed Chomp with Fire Blast so you'll be able to take on the Corviknight. I don't know if you run a rock type move though in this ground type move this match because I think rock looks really good into like two of the three mons. But like I said, I don't know if you're in TC Moltres, so you could still rock that ground type move. But I don't know. It really kind of depends on how you feel about the team matchup. Galarian Slowking looks pretty good in this matchup as a really good momentum based Pokemon, also getting hazards up, which I think is really important there. Manaphy looks absolutely insane. Tail Glow Manaphy is really three here. Now, I do think Bolty has to be a little careful because I could definitely see a potential mirror Urban on one or two Pokemon. that he could show this up with there. Ice Cube, unfortunately, is not going to make a debut, and probably will never make the debut this season. Toad's Cruel, don't really think you bring Toad's Cruel when there's like things like Cleavor, Moltres, Corviknight, Walking Away, and stuff. Like, I really don't think you can bring that. King Gambit, I don't really think you bring. I don't think it's really that good into this matchup, especially with the coverage options the opposing teams have. I I just don't really think it's that good of a lawn in this matchup. Could I still see it being brought? Maybe, but I don't really know. Heatran's pretty solid, decently solid this matchup. I think Heatran could really do things. I think if you bring Heatran, you either bring Chopple or Shuka. Shuka to cover a potential ground switching on a couple of things, but Chopple primarily just because you would take on things like the Corviknight's Body Press, the Cleaver's Close Combat, the Body Press from Gudra, the Fighting Move from the Terrakion, and the Aura Spear from the Gardevoir. So I do think he turns a pretty decent matchup with that. Kilowatt Troll is really, really good at this matchup. Gudra is the only switch into Kilowatt Troll that he has. I think Enamorus looks really strong here. Moonblast spam is pretty free here. Moonblast into Mystical Fire can kind of help with dealing with Corviknight. I think something like Berry with Calm Mind looks really good here, which I think is really solid for this matchup. And what else does Baldy have? That's it. In terms of this matchup, though, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm gonna go with Arc. I'm probably gonna be wrong about this, but I do think some of the offense that Arc has is really gonna overwhelm Baldy. Like Wake, Cleavor, and Terrakion look really good into him. So I really think those three are gonna really provide good pressure here. Greninja might be mixed on support and offense here. So that's gonna be really and then like the main bulk will be stuff like Corviknight and Gudra. So I really think this is gonna do these Arcs should have a decent chance to win this one. Up next, a first ever matchup here. We have got Ant Ant here, it's whatever, who has a chance to make the playoffs and take the team that he took over and make it to playoffs, which would be really hype. He's got Sneasler, Zapdos, Necrozma, Mamoswine, Hydreigon, Empoleon, Diancie, Wacky, Farigiraf, and Cryogonal. He takes on everyone's favorite Dell D double, who's got Palafin, Blaziken, Archaludon, or Thundurus, Shaman, Fezidipity, Crocodile, Melba, and Rotom. I'm gonna say it right now, Dell's getting 6 0 by a Zapdos. Zapdos has an insanely good matchup. The only problem Zapdos has here, though, it has to be Roost 3 attacks. I think that is going to have to be your Zapdos set in this matchup because we need Heat Wave to be neutral against the Archaludon. But other than that, your Dual Stab has no resistance. There is nothing that stops it from just doing whatever it wants. Sneasler, also really threatening here. Sneasler has literally no good switch-ins whatsoever on this team. Like, obviously, Rotom's a good switch in, but Night Slash, like, I think dual stab plus Night Slash just checks the boxes for everything. So I could see something like Swords Dance. I could see something like Banded. Like, there's a lot of ways I think you can kind of go with this. But Sneasel looks absolutely insane. Necrozma also looks really good. Dragon Dance Necrozma kind of just wins. Like, Dragon Dance, Earthquake, Photon Geyser, and then more than likely Brick Break with Clear Amulet. It just wins the game. Like there's nothing that Dell will be able to do to stop Necrozma from potentially sweeping. Um, Mamoswine, I think you don't bring. Mamoswine kind of doesn't have that good of a matchup unless it's Scarf. Even then, if it's Scarf, Mamoswine kind of loses to a couple of things. So don't really know if you're going to bring that. The Hydreigon is pretty damn threatening here, as you do not have a good fairy resist, dragon resist besides your Pheasantipity. So like Nasty Plot, Earth Power with Roselia Berry. But I do think the Hydreigon does have to fear things like the Blaziken to an extent, AB or Chaladon. Shaman being able to take hits and dazzling gleam. So I don't realistically know if Hydreigon comes, but it's definitely something that Dell has to be on the safe side to do in case the Hydreigon does come. The Empoleon, I feel like you might be forced to bring it to be a good Palafin check, but I don't really know about that. I mean, this is not the strongest matchup for Empoleon, in my honest opinion, but it's not the worst matchup for Empoleon, to say the least. Thwacky, you're not bringing Thwacky unless you're desperate. For Rigorath, I know he's your friend, but he's kind of bad. Cryogonal actually could make a fair case to be brought here. Freeze Dry plus Ice Beam Spam looks really good. Water Pulse with that Blaziken switch in, and then Recover as an option. I could also see Specs, which is a pretty solid option in this matchup as well. Overall, I think Ant has a really good matchup here. Palafin, not bad this game. Palafin kind of checks a lot of boxes here. I do think if you bring Palafin, oh, there's Diancie. I don't think Diancie's brought though. I think Palafin actually is a really good match. I do think you have to be forced to be Protective Pads or Lumberry. Lumberry just so you can just make sure you don't get static paired. But I think the Protective Pads just looks really strong into this team to be able to kind of just resist the um things. I think Blaziken can be really strong here. Blaziken's actually really strong. I think an SD Blaziken set can really kind of go in. I really wish Blaziken had some way to boost special attack, because then I actually think special would actually work a lot better in this matchup. But SE is pretty strong. Archaludon, I think if you bring it, is possibly scarfed. Just because Scarf Archaludon is really strong here. I could also see a case for Specs. Specs also looks insanely good as like the fairy type's not going to be brought in, and your only other dragon resist will be the Empoleon, which is a little bit of a tough time being brought. I could see Power Herb Electro Shot because it's never been. I don't think Dell's really been bringing that at all, and I would love to see it. Shaman, a really good mon in this matchup. I think it has to be potentially either Kevia Berry or it's got to be Covercloak to take one hit from the Sneasler potentially. Fizzidibity, another Pokemon looks really decently well into the matchup. I think it just has to get past that Necrozma to an extent. But other than that, I think it kind of could take on quite a bit, a lot of things. Crook, Crook's not bad. I think Crook can definitely come. Crook definitely could be a bit more offensive threat. I could see a Chopper Berry set so that we could take on the Sneasler, which I think is really good. I think you bring something along the lines of maybe like Bulk Up, Earthquake, Stone Edge, and then either knockoff or a stronger dark move potentially, maybe. I don't know. Really kind of just depends on the matchup there. But I think overall it's just a super strong Pokemon, and I think it's really great. Meloetta, don't really know if you bring that. It's gonna be a little weird to bring, but I could see it being brought for the Relic Song purposes for Pirouette, but also just for Relic Song in general. But I don't really know. It's really kind of tough to say on whether or not you really bring it. But I think Pirouette form does look really good. Rotom, don't really think Rotom has a case for it. I think if Rotom comes, it's got to be scarfed. It's got to be either max bulk to take hits. But overall, a solid game plan from Dell, though. But I am going to probably have to pick my guy Ant here. Just because Ant, I feel like has just a good team composition into most things that Dell can't really beat or take on. So I am going to have to go, unfortunately, with Ant here. I wanted to pick Dell so you can end the season with a W, but I have to go with Ant here just because I think Ant matches up a lot better. And the last matchup here, and this is a matchup I think I almost decided to make game of the week, but since these both made playoffs, both teams made playoffs, I don't think it's really worth it. Now, Leo can technically get knocked out of playoffs still if he gets really messed up by Diff, with not only with him losing, but also how his opponents win. But it should be very interesting to say the least. But we have got my main man Obo here taking on Six with Haxmore. I think Obo has never taken on Leo before. This is only to my knowledge, if I remember correctly. So this matchup partially doesn't matter, but if I know Obo, he wants to finish the season strong and definitely does not want to give anyone a free win. So Obo's team is Urshifu, Iron Moth, Landers, Therian, Rotom Wash, Jirachi, Cyclozar, Brambles, Galvantula, Sneeze, and Florges. While Leo has the Terrapagos, the Roaring Moon, Ogerpon, Wellspring, the Hatterene, Cobalion, Alamola, Clodsire, Thunderisterian, Sinister, and the Magneton. Looking at this matchup, Urshifu go Burr. Urshifu has got probably the best matchup it's been wanting all season. Like this Urshifu, I feel like has not had like a great standout matchup for me in my personal opinion, but this Urshifu finally gets it this week against Leo. I think Urshifu is super strong, dual stab plus sucker punch is really strong here. I can see a case for SD, I can see a case for Bandit, I can see a case for Scarf. There's just a lot of ways to go. I can even see the case for Black Glasses in this matchup, so super strong Pokemon. Iron Moth is dummy broken here. I think boost your special attack is kind of the way to go in this matchup. Now, the reason why I say that, unaware does not like booster goes past unaware, if I remember correctly from what someone said. I heard someone say this, but booster goes through unaware. So getting that plus, like getting that boost in special attack and be able to two shot a Clodsire with psychic looks super fun here. I think agility, psychic, fiery dance, and then potentially sludge wave, or maybe something else like maybe power or meteor beam if you're not booster. Going from that way as well. But just overall, a super strong Pokemon this matchup. Lando T, don't really know if you bring it. It's pretty decent into the matchup. It does really well. I do think if you bring it though, you might be forced to bring SD. You might be forced to bring Bandit. I don't really know because you do have Conjure, can take on the Sinistro, which really really well. Stone Edge, which checks on a lot of things, and then Earthquake Spam is also really free. But it'll be really interesting here. But I do think Lano T's got a really good matchup. Rotom Wash, a really good defensive pivot. This matchup really kind of checks a lot of boxes. It can invite the Thundy. You can just go for a free Hydro Palm, get a 2 AKO on that, which I think is really good. Clodsire is definitely going to have to be forced to either be unaware or be water absorb this matchup if Clodsire is brought. So that's gonna be something that will also play a big factor into this matchup as well. Because if it's unaware Clodsire, then it loses to this row. If it is water absorb, then it loses to any other set of threat in the game. So there's that. Jirachi's pretty solid this matchup. I don't think there's a ton of things that scare Jirachi from being brought besides the Rolling Moon. Cyclizar, don't think it comes. Pretty bad Pokemon into this matchup. Brambleghast, again, don't really think that comes as well unless it's really comfortable enough to do a lot in this matchup. But again, I don't really think it makes a ton of sense, but I could see it. Webs from Galvantula is a possibility. Galvantula in general is also really solid in this matchup a decent amount of the time. But I don't think you really bring Gal just because of Magic Bounce from Hatterene, which I think is a very fair case to see why it's not brought. Sneasel could potentially be brought. It really kind of comes down to what Clodsire is. And also if Alomola comes. If Alomola comes, then it could be also a thing, which I can definitely see a basically defensive Alomola being brought to help check things like the Landorus, the Urshifu, the Jirachi, and stuff. We'll be interested to see the best, but Sneasel can definitely be a big threat here. I think SD with Ice Shard is really threatening. I think Low Kick is also pretty free into most teams, and then I think Icicle Spear is also really threatening. Florges, I think you might be forced to be Rain because of the fact that you need something for that Roaring Moon to kind of check it a little bit. Also checking the things like the Ogre Pond decently well as well. But from Leo's side, Terapagos. Besides Jirachi and Brambleghast, what's a normal switching? I think Leo just brings Calm Mind, Terra Blast, not Terra Blast, Terratar Storm, Dark Pulse, and then either Rapid Spin to get a speed buff, but also to help keep hazards off the center field, or potentially Rock Polish and try to get to Calm Minds up if he can, or if he really wanted to, he can go with a Meteor Beam set because Meteor Beam could be pretty free to get that free special attack boost on while still having your Terra Shell, and then trying to Calm Mind up and then break your Terra Shell so you're +2, +1 def. I don't really know. I think more so Rock Polish is a little bit more better here in my opinion, but who knows, right? Rory Moon is not bad this matchup. I think if you bring it, it's either boost your speed with acrobatics. I think it's either clear amulet with dragon dance, Lumberry potentially as well. I don't know. There's a couple of ways you could really run Rory Moon in this matchup. Ogerpon Wellspring, it's really tough to say. Like, it's a good answer to things like the Landorus, which I think is really great. Um, Iron Moth is like the wild card for it, to be honest. If I'm going to be straight with you here, it's really kind of tough to kind of bring it and be like a check-in or switch in some stuff, especially with U-turns and volt switches going around. But I don't know. It's still a really good Pokemon at this matchup. Like, and it really beats like the top four relatively with ease. But I don't know. It's a really kind of tough matchup for it, but I do think it can definitely fit onto the team. Hatterene, I definitely think has a very decent chance to be brought. I think Trick Room looks really good into Obo's team, which I think is really a big factor there. Cobalion, I could see a potential case for, but I don't know if it's guaranteed going to be brought. It kind of just depends. I think Aloe plus Clodsire is kind of needed in this matchup. Clodsire might be not brought in because of the fact that Unaware and Water Absorb playing factors unless the Aloe can check whatever Clodsire can't check. And then probably for that last slot, it could be Thunderous. Thunderous looks really strong. I think you just got to get past things like the Lando T, realistically speaking, and then you can kind of just win the game. Sinistra, don't really think there's a case for Sinistra here. I could see some viability with it, but I don't really know if it's broad. And there's no Magneton. So in terms of the matchup here, I actually think I'm going to give it to my main man Obo. I think Obo's team matches up really well in a Leo, and we have a chance for Obo here to finish as the number one or number two seed potentially. So I feel like for Obo, he will try semi hard because I think he would love to finish as the number one seed and to prove to people when he first drafted a very bad, kind of a bad team and went from a bad team to actually misfits and then misfits working out. Still don't understand why this sneeze is here, but I do think Obo's going to win this matchup. But that is the week eight pick'ems, ladies and gentlemen. So what's going to happen going forward is we are going to do playoff breakdowns, and I will actually probably try to grab maybe one or two coaches, maybe four coaches, and then have four interviews set up as well during the week and try to get those going on. Now, granted, it only comes down if the coaches have time, so that's gonna be a factor I'm gonna do there because I would love to do what Owen did during SPL and during like the playoffs. Get like maybe a coach or two to get interviewed during the playoffs to kind of go and maybe get their thoughts said, maybe on the season, talk about what mons were awesome on their team, what mons kind of were disappointing in their season, and all that. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to check out everyone in the description down below because they are the coaches, and the coaches are the ones that bring you the entertaining content along with myself. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys for the playoffs. Peace.